Imagine getting all the way to the cruise terminal. Your bags are packed, your boarding pass is ready, and you are excited to finally get on the ship. Then, someone looks at your mobility scooter and says, "Sorry, you can't bring that on board." And just like that, your cruise has a problem before you have even seen the buffet. Now, this video is not here to scare seniors away from cruising. Cruising can be one of the best holidays in the world, but there are some mistakes senior cruisers make that are not just small annoyances. Some can get you denied boarding. Some can leave you with a huge medical bill. Some can leave you stuck in port while the ship sails away. And one real story shows how quickly a simple port day can turn serious. The scary part is, most of these mistakes look harmless at first. They look like, "I'll sort that out when I get there." But on a cruise ship, sometimes that is already too late. So today, we're going through 11 things seniors should never do on a cruise. And most people only learn these after something has already gone wrong. And stay for number 4, because that one explains why a scooter can be stopped before it even gets on board. If you love cruising, press the like button because it really helps the channel. Let's get into it. Number 1. Assuming the ship has a wheelchair waiting for you. This mistake catches a lot of seniors because it sounds so reasonable. You might not need a wheelchair every day at home. You can walk around the house. You can get through the shops. You can manage short distances. So you think, if I get tired on the cruise, I'll just ask for a wheelchair. But that is where the problem starts. A cruise ship is much bigger than many people expect. You may have a long walk through the terminal before you even board. Then there is check-in, security, ramps, gangways, lifts, long corridors, dining rooms, theaters, buffet areas, and ports that can involve piers, shuttle buses, uneven ground, heat, hills, and crowds. And suddenly, "I'll be fine" can turn into, "Why is everything so far away?" The mistake is assuming the ship has a wheelchair waiting for you to use whenever you need it. In many cases, wheelchair assistance is mainly there to help passengers get on and off the ship at the home port. That does not usually mean you get a wheelchair to keep for the whole cruise. It does not mean someone will push you around the ship all week. And it does not mean there will be a wheelchair waiting at every port when your legs have had enough. That can be a horrible shock if you only realize it after boarding, because now the cabin feels too far from the dining room. The theater feels like it is at the other end of the world. The buffet feels like a hiking trail with desserts at the end. And the cruise that was meant to feel relaxing starts feeling exhausting. This is not about pride. It is not about being embarrassed. It is about being honest before you sail, not after you are already tired and sore. If walking long distances is difficult, plan your mobility before the cruise. Call the cruise line or your travel agent. Ask what assistance is available at embarkation. Ask what happens at ports. Ask whether you need to bring your own wheelchair, rent one, or arrange mobility equipment before boarding. And think carefully about your cabin location too. If walking is hard, booking the cheapest cabin at the far end of the ship can turn every meal, show, and coffee run into a mission. Cruises can be wonderful for seniors, but they still involve a lot of walking. So the rule is simple. Do not assume the ship has a wheelchair waiting for you. If you may need one, sort it out before you sail, because needing help is not the problem. The problem is only finding out too late that the help you expected is not there. Number 2. Leaving the group without a plan to be found. This is one of the most serious mistakes on the list, and it is not about scaring seniors away from port days. Port days can be amazing. You get off the ship, see somewhere new, take photos, try local food, and come back feeling like you did something more exciting than just finding the dessert station again. But there is one mistake seniors should never make. Leaving the group without a clear plan for how someone will know where you are. Because in a port, things can change fast. A walk that looked easy can suddenly feel too far. A hot day can drain you quicker than expected. A path can be uneven. A meeting point can be confusing. And if you are tired, unwell, dizzy, or in a remote place, "I'll just head back by myself" can become much more serious than people realize. There was a tragic real story in Australia involving 80-year-old Suzanne Reese. She was on a cruise stop at Lizard Island and joined an organized hike. Reports said she became unwell during the walk and headed back down, but she never made it back to the ship. Her absence was not noticed until later, after the ship had already left, and her body was found the next day. That is heartbreaking. And it shows why this is not about being silly or careless. It is about how quickly a simple port day can turn serious when someone separates from the group and there is no strong check-in plan. So the rule is simple. Do not leave the group without a plan to be found. If you feel tired, unwell, too hot, short of breath, or unsure about continuing, tell the guide clearly. Do not just wander off or turn back alone unless someone knows exactly what is happening. Make sure someone sees you return to the bus, the meeting point, the tender area, or the ship. And if you are traveling with family or friends, use a simple buddy system. That does not mean everyone has to stay together all day like a school excursion. But if someone splits off, agree on where they are going, when they will be back, and what happens if they are not there. Also, do not rely only on your phone. Phones can lose signal. Batteries can die. Roaming may not work. And in some ports, once you walk away from the main area, everything can start looking very different. A better plan is to carry the ship's port information, the emergency contact details if provided, your cruise card, photo ID if required, and a screenshot or photo of the meeting point. Take a photo of the bus, the port sign, the guide's sign, or the place you need to return to. Because cruise brain is real, you can remember exactly where the buffet is, but somehow forget which pier you came from. And before you join any walk, hike, old town tour, ruins visit, beach stop, or market trip, ask yourself a few honest questions. Is it hot? Is there shade? Are there places to sit? Is the ground uneven? How far is it back? And would I feel safe doing part of this alone? If the answer worries you, listen to that feeling. There is no shame in choosing an easier tour. There is no shame in turning around early. There is no shame in saying, I do not want to do this by myself. The danger is not needing help. The danger is becoming hard to find. So before you leave the ship, make one simple rule. Nobody disappears without telling someone. Nobody turns back alone without being checked on. And nobody assumes, they'll know where I am. Because on a cruise port day, being independent is wonderful. But being findable is even better. Number 3. Waiting until boarding day to mention medical equipment. This mistake sounds boring until it becomes the thing that ruins the first night of the cruise. Because a lot of seniors think, it's only a CPAP machine, or it's just insulin, or I'll just ask for distilled water when I get there. And that sounds harmless. But on a cruise ship, I'll ask when I get there can be the problem. Cruise ships can do a lot. They can feed thousands of people, put on theater shows, sail across oceans, and somehow turn a towel into a monkey hanging from the ceiling. But they are not mind readers. If you need medical equipment, special supplies, oxygen arrangements, a sharps container, a medical fridge, distilled water, a shower stool, a raised toilet seat, or anything else that affects your health and safety, the cruise line may need to know before you arrive. Not when you are standing at the cabin door. Not after your suitcase is unpacked. And definitely not at 10 o'clock at night when you suddenly realize the cabin does not have what you need. This mistake often happens because people do not want to make a fuss. They feel embarrassed. They think, I'll just manage. Or they assume cruise lines deal with this all the time, so surely it will be easy to sort out on board. But the crew can only help properly if the right people know early enough. For example, if you use a CPAP machine, you may need distilled water and a safe place to plug it in. If you use injections, you may need a sharps container. If your medication must stay cold, you may need to ask about proper medical cooling, not just assume the little cabin fridge will be suitable. And if you need oxygen, dialysis supplies, or mobility equipment delivered, that is not something to casually mention at check-in, like you are asking where the buffet is. That needs planning. And if you wait until boarding day, the answer may not be, of course, no problem. The answer might be, we needed to know about that earlier. That is the sentence nobody wants to hear after paying for a cruise. So before you sail, make a medical equipment checklist. Not just a packing list, a proper checklist. Ask yourself, what do I use every day? What needs power? What needs cooling? What needs distilled water? What needs safe disposal? What needs approval? What needs to be delivered? And what would become a serious problem if I did not have it for even one night? That last question is the big one, because some things are not optional. A spare hat is optional. An extra outfit is optional. Even that third pair of shoes you packed just in case is probably optional. But medical equipment is not the thing to gamble with. Also, do not assume every cruise line has the same rules. One cruise line may have a special needs form. Another may have a different process. Some things may need weeks of notice. Some supplies may need to come from an approved provider. Some items may have rules about batteries, storage, plugs, extension cords, or where they can be used. So contact the cruise line or your travel agent early and ask exactly what they need from you. Then, get it in writing if you can. Save the email. Take screenshots. Print the confirmation if that makes you feel safer. Because if something is missing when you board, you do not want to be standing at guest services saying, "Someone told me it would be fine," with no proof. That is how a small issue becomes a long line, a stressful conversation, and a very bad start to the cruise. And please do not be embarrassed to ask. You're not the first person to cruise with a CPAP machine. You're not the first person to need medication cooled. You're not the first person to need a sharps container, distilled water, oxygen arrangements, or extra bathroom support. The mistake is not needing medical help. The mistake is staying quiet until it is too late to organize it properly. So if you need medical equipment, mention it early. Fill out the forms. Check the rules. Confirm what will be waiting for you. And keep your most important medical items with you, not buried in checked luggage where you cannot reach them. Because the best medical plan on a cruise is the one you sort out before the ship leaves the dock. Number 4. Bringing a scooter the ship can say no to. This is the one from the thumbnail, and it is one of the biggest surprises for some senior cruisers. Because a lot of people think, it's my mobility scooter. I need it to get around. Of course I can bring it. And that sounds logical. But on a cruise ship, a scooter is not treated like a normal suitcase. You cannot just turn up with it, roll it to the gangway, and assume everything will be fine. The cruise line may care about the scooter's width, length, weight, battery type, whether you declared it in advance, whether it fits through your cabin door, and whether it can be stored safely inside your cabin. That last part is important, because the ship may not have some magic storage room where scooters that do not fit can just be parked for the week. And if the scooter cannot be accepted, stored, or safely used on board, that can become a much bigger problem than people expect. Imagine this. You arrive at the cruise terminal. Your bags are tagged. Your documents are ready. You can see the ship right there. You're already thinking about lunch, sail away, and finally relaxing. Then suddenly, the scooter becomes the issue. Not your passport, not your booking, not your suitcase. The scooter. And if you depend on that scooter to get around, that is not a small inconvenience. That could change the whole cruise before it even starts. This is why scooter planning has to happen before you sail, not at the terminal, not after check-in, and not when you are already standing there hoping the crew can just make it work. Before you book, measure the scooter properly. Check the width, check the length, check the battery type, then check the cruise line's mobility rules and the cabin doorway size. Because a scooter might fit perfectly at home, but that does not mean it will fit through a cruise cabin door. And if you need an accessible cabin, do not leave that until later. Accessible cabins can sell out quickly, and they are not something you want to discover you need after the regular cabin is already booked. Also, do not assume a normal cabin will work just because the booking website let you choose it. The website does not know what scooter you are bringing. It does not know whether it will fit through the door. It does not know whether you can turn it around inside the cabin. It does not know whether it can be charged safely without blocking the room. You have to check those things. And please do not assume you can just park it outside the cabin either. That is a separate mistake we will talk about later because hallways are not personal scooter garages. The hallway may feel like empty space, but on a ship, it is also part of the safety route for crew and passengers. So the safest rule is simple. Do not book the cruise first and think about the scooter later. Do it the other way around. Check the scooter, check the cabin, check the doorway, check the battery rules, declare the device, fill out the right mobility forms if the cruise line requires them, and get confirmation before you sail. If you are renting a scooter, choose one that is suitable for cruise ships and make sure you know the measurements. Do not just pick the comfiest looking one in the photo. Comfort is lovely, but actually allowed on board is even better. And even if you only use a scooter sometimes, this still matters. Cruise ships involve a lot of walking. The dining room might be far from your cabin. The theater might be on another deck. The gangway might involve waiting. And the port could be much harder than expected. So if a scooter is part of how you stay safe, comfortable, or independent, treat it like part of the cruise booking. Not an afterthought, because bringing a scooter is not the mistake. The mistake is assuming the ship has to accept any scooter in any cabin with no warning, no measurements, and no plan. That is how a mobility aid can suddenly become the thing that stops the holiday before it starts. So before you sail, measure it, declare it, check the rules, and make sure your cabin can actually handle it. Because the worst place to find out your scooter is not allowed is at the terminal, with the ship sitting right there. Number 5. Trusting a private tour to beat the ship's clock. Private excursions can be brilliant. They can be cheaper than the cruise line's tours. They can be smaller. They can feel more personal. And sometimes they give you a better day than following a giant crowd with numbered stickers like you are on a school trip with cocktails. But there is one mistake seniors should never make. Do not trust a private tour unless there is a serious safety buffer to get back to the ship. Because the ship's clock does not care how lovely the tour guide is. It does not care that traffic was bad. It does not care that someone needed extra time getting on and off the bus. It does not care that the driver kept saying, "Don't worry, we make it." Those are not comforting words when the ship is already pulling away. There was a real story in 2024 involving 8 passengers on the Norwegian Dawn. They were left behind in São Tomé and Príncipe after a private tour returned late. Reports said the group included a pregnant passenger and a traveler with serious mobility needs. And once they missed the ship, it was not just embarrassing. They had to deal with passports, travel arrangements, belongings left on board, extra costs, stress, and the nightmare of trying to catch up with the ship in another country. That is not how anyone wants to remember a cruise, and it shows the big difference between a relaxed port day and a risky one. The mistake is not booking a private tour. The mistake is booking a private tour with no breathing room. If the ship says all aboard is 4:30, you do not want a tour that plans to return at 4 o'clock. That is not a buffer. That is a prayer with a seatbelt. You want to be back near the ship much earlier than that, especially if the port involves traffic, tenders, long piers, shuttle buses, border checks, or any kind of unpredictable transport. And tender ports need extra caution. That is when the ship anchors away from the dock and small boats take passengers back and forth. So it is not enough to be back near the water. You still need time to get on the tender, wait your turn, and actually reach the ship. Before booking a private excursion, ask the boring questions first. What time does the tour return? How far from the ship does it finish? Is it a tender port? What happens if the tour runs late? Is the operator used to cruise passengers? And do they understand the difference between ship departure time and all aboard time? Because those are not always the same thing. If the ship leaves at 5 o'clock, all aboard might be much earlier. And you need to plan around all aboard, not the moment the ship disappears over the horizon. Also, make sure the tour timing works for the slowest person in the group. That matters. If someone needs extra time walking, getting on and off the bus, using the bathroom, dealing with heat, or moving with a walker or scooter, that time has to be part of the plan from the start, not remembered when everyone is already late. So if you book privately, give yourself a big safety buffer. Carry the ship's port contact details. Bring essential medication with you. Keep some local cash or a working card. And always know how you would get back if the tour had a problem, because the ship might wait for many things, but it may not wait for a private tour that guessed the timing wrong. And if you are a senior cruiser, the goal is not to avoid adventure. The goal is to make sure the adventure ends with you safely back on board, telling the story over dinner. Not trying to chase your cruise ship across another country. And coming up, this next mistake is not about scooters, tours, cabins, or paperwork. It is about that awkward moment before a cruise when your own body is trying to tell you something. But your brain says, "Nope, we paid for this. We are going." Number 6. Trying to board when your body is already warning you. This is a difficult one, because nobody wants to miss a cruise. You have counted down the days. You have packed the suitcase. You have probably told half the family, "Don't call me, I'll be at sea." So if you wake up before boarding with a cough, fever, vomiting, diarrhea, dizziness, or you feel really unwell, it is very tempting to say, "I'll be fine." And sometimes people are not just hoping they feel better. They are scared. Scared that if they admit they are sick, they might not be allowed on board. So they push through. They hide symptoms. They tell themselves it is just travel stress. They convince themselves the cruise will fix it, but that is where the mistake starts. A cruise ship is a wonderful place for a holiday. It is also a very good place for germs to go on holiday too. You are sharing lifts, handrails, dining rooms, theaters, buses, tenders, bathrooms, buffets, and narrow hallways with thousands of people. So if someone boards with something contagious, it can spread quickly. That is why cruise lines take illness at boarding seriously. You may be asked health questions. You may be assessed if you look clearly unwell. And in some cases, if there are signs of a contagious illness, boarding can become a problem. That might sound harsh, but on a ship, one passenger's illness can affect a lot of other people. And for seniors, this matters even more. Older passengers may be more vulnerable if they become seriously unwell on board, and being sick at sea can be much more stressful than being sick at home. Because once the ship leaves, you're not just 5 minutes from your normal doctor. You're on a ship. Medical care is limited compared with a hospital on land. The cost can be high. And if you get worse, your cruise may turn into cabin isolation, a medical center visit, or even being taken off the ship. That is not the holiday anyone planned. The mistake is not getting sick. Nobody chooses that. The mistake is ignoring the warning signs and hoping the cruise will magically fix it. It usually does not. If your body is already struggling before boarding, the first day can be much harder than you expect. There is the terminal, the walking, the standing, the crowds, the heat, the luggage, the safety drill, the long corridors, and suddenly the cruise you forced yourself onto feels less like a holiday and more like an endurance test with a buffet. So if you feel seriously unwell before your cruise, do not wait until you are standing at the terminal to decide what to do. Check the cruise line's health rules. Contact them if you need to. Speak to a doctor or pharmacist if that is appropriate. Look at your travel insurance and understand your options before you are stressed, tired, and trying to pretend you are fine while your body is clearly voting no. And please, do not hide strong symptoms just because you're worried about missing out. That can backfire. If you're clearly unwell at boarding, it may create a bigger problem. And if you make it on board and then become worse, you may still miss the cruise anyway, except now you're missing it from a cabin, feeling terrible, while everyone else is at dinner. Also think about the other people on board. Cruises have seniors, children, families, people with health conditions, and crew members who work incredibly hard and cannot just leave if something spreads. Being honest about illness is not just about rules. It is about not turning your problem into everyone else's problem. Now, this does not mean every sneeze means your cruise is over. People get allergies. People get dry throats from air conditioning. People get tired from travel. But if your symptoms are strong, contagious looking, or getting worse, take them seriously. Do not just say, "I'll push through." That is how a small worry can become a much bigger problem. The safest rule is simple. If your body is warning you before boarding, listen early. Ask questions early. Get advice early. And make a proper decision before you're standing there with your suitcase, trying to look healthy enough to board. Because the goal is not just to get on the ship. The goal is to actually enjoy the cruise once you are there. Number 7. Parking a scooter where it becomes everyone's problem. This mistake sounds small. You get back to your cabin. You're tired? The scooter is awkward to move. The cabin feels tight. So you think, "I'll just leave it outside the door for a minute." And you can understand why someone might think that. The hallway looks like empty space. It is right there. It feels easier than trying to squeeze a scooter into a small cabin after a long day. But on a cruise ship, the hallway is not spare storage. It is not a scooter garage. And it is definitely not the place to leave something that other passengers, crew, wheelchairs, walkers, luggage, cleaning carts, or emergency teams may need to get past. Cruise ship hallways can already feel narrow. Add cabin stewards working, passengers with bags, people using walkers, families with prams, and someone trying to get back to their room after dinner while holding cookies they definitely did not need. And suddenly one parked scooter can become a real problem. This is why cruise lines usually want mobility devices stored inside the cabin, not left outside in the corridor. It is not just about rules, it is about safety. If there is an emergency, people need clear pathways. Crew need to move quickly. Passengers need to get through. And nobody should have to squeeze around a scooter in a hallway, especially if they have mobility issues themselves. There was also a recent legal case where a passenger claimed she was injured after tripping over a mobility scooter in a crowded cruise ship casino. Now, that was not a cabin hallway, but it shows the bigger point. A scooter parked in the wrong place is not just annoying, it can become a hazard. And if someone trips, falls, or cannot get through safely, it is no longer just your scooter. It becomes everyone's problem. That is also why planning matters before you sail. If your scooter does not fit inside the cabin, the answer cannot be, I'll just leave it outside. That may not be allowed. And even if nobody says anything at first, it can still create a safety issue. So, before you bring a scooter, make sure you know where it will be stored, where it will be charged, and whether it can fit inside the cabin without blocking the room. And once on board, be careful in public areas too. Do not leave a scooter where people naturally walk, turn, queue, or gather. That includes outside dining rooms, theaters, lifts, casinos, lounges, buffet entrances, and gangways. If you need to park it, look for a proper space and make sure it is not blocking a walkway, because on a ship, people are always moving. Someone may be carrying drinks, someone may be using a walker, someone may have poor vision, someone may be unsteady on their feet, and someone may not expect a scooter to be sitting where they are trying to walk. The point is not to make seniors feel bad for using scooters. Not at all. A scooter can be the reason someone gets to enjoy the whole cruise instead of missing half of it. The mistake is not using one. The mistake is treating shared walkways like extra cabin space. So keep the hallways clear, park carefully in public areas, and make sure your scooter helps you enjoy the cruise without becoming the reason someone else's cruise goes wrong. Number 8. Cruising alone when you actually need hands-on help. This one needs to be said kindly because cruising alone can be wonderful. You eat when you want. You nap when you want. You go to the show you want. And nobody is standing in the cabin doorway saying, "Are you ready yet?" While you are clearly still trying to find your other shoe. But there is one mistake some senior cruisers should never make. Do not cruise alone if you actually need hands-on personal help every day. Because a cruise ship is not assisted living. The crew can do many things. They can clean your cabin. They can serve your meals. They can answer questions. They can help with directions. They can make your cruise feel comfortable and enjoyable. But they are not personal carers. And that difference matters. Some passengers think, if I need help, I'll just ask the crew. But cruise staff are usually not there to help with eating, dressing, toileting, showering, lifting, transferring from a wheelchair, getting someone in and out of bed, or managing personal care. That is not because they are being unkind. It is because there are safety rules, staff limits, training boundaries, and liability issues. A cabin steward is not your nurse. A waiter is not your carer. And a crew member at the gangway is not a hospital transfer team. So if you need that level of help, you need a capable traveling companion, a proper care plan, or a cruise that has been arranged around those needs before you sail. This is especially important for solo seniors, because when you travel with family, a friend, or a carer, someone else may notice when you're struggling. Someone can help with your routine. Someone can remind you about medication. Someone can go to guest services while you rest. Someone can say, "No, that tour is too much today." But when you cruise alone, every problem lands on you. If you cannot safely shower, dress, use the bathroom, eat, transfer, get to the safety drill, manage medication, or move around the cabin without help, the cruise can become stressful very quickly, and it can become a safety issue too. Not just for you, but for crew who may want to help but may not be allowed or trained to provide that kind of personal care. Now, this does not mean seniors with health problems should not cruise. Not at all. Plenty of seniors cruise with walkers, scooters, wheelchairs, CPAP machines, medications, hearing aids, medical conditions, and mobility limits. The issue is not needing support. The issue is needing hands-on personal care and assuming the ship will provide it. That is the mistake. So before booking a solo cruise, ask yourself the honest questions. Can I shower safely? Can I get dressed by myself? Can I use the bathroom safely? Can I get in and out of bed? Can I move around the cabin? Can I get to the dining room? Can I attend the safety drill? Can I manage my medication? And if something went wrong at 2 o'clock in the morning, could I get help safely? That question is not meant to scare anyone. It is meant to protect the cruise. Because the goal is not to prove you can go alone. The goal is to book a cruise you can actually enjoy. If you do need hands-on help, plan it properly before you sail. Travel with someone capable. Ask the cruise line what support is available and what is not. Book the right cabin. Arrange medical equipment early. Choose easier ports. Avoid tours that are too physical. And do not pretend you need less help than you really do just because you do not want to make a fuss. There is no shame in needing assistance. There is no shame in cruising with a companion. There is no shame in choosing the setup that keeps you safe, comfortable, and independent in the ways that matter. The real danger is pretending you can manage everything alone when deep down, you know you cannot. Because once the ship sails, You cannot suddenly turn a cabin steward into a personal carer. You cannot expect the crew to lift, dress, shower, toilet, or physically care for you. And you cannot expect the ship to fix a care plan that should have been sorted before boarding. So if you are a senior thinking about cruising solo, ask the honest questions early. Not to stop yourself from cruising, but to make sure the cruise you book is one you can safely enjoy. Because cruising alone can feel freeing. But cruising alone when you need hands-on help can turn freedom into stress very quickly. Number 9. Thinking Medicare or normal insurance covers the ship. This is one of the most expensive mistakes on the whole list. A lot of seniors hear the words domestic cruise or coastal cruise and think, well, we are still close to home, so surely Medicare or my normal health insurance will cover me. And that sounds logical. You might be sailing from your own country. You might be visiting familiar ports. You might not even be flying overseas. So it feels like a normal holiday. But a cruise ship is not the same as walking into your local doctor's clinic, and the ship's medical center is not the same as using your usual health cover on land. That is where people can get a very nasty shock. Medical treatment on board can be charged at private rates. You may have to pay the bill before you leave the ship, and if you need to be transferred to a hospital, evacuated, or flown off the ship, the cost can become enormous very quickly. This is not a small, oops, I should have checked mistake. This can be thousands, tens of thousands, or in extreme cases, much more. Smart Traveler warns that medical evacuation from a cruise ship by helicopter can cost in the hundreds of thousands. Carnival Australia also says daily hospital bills can cost as much as 5,000 Australian dollars per day. That is not the kind of bill anyone wants sitting on the kitchen table after a holiday. There was a sad Australian story about a 74-year-old man on his first cruise with his wife. He became seriously ill during the trip, had to be airlifted to hospital, and sadly died. His wife later received a medical bill of almost $9,000 after they had not bought travel insurance, reportedly because they believed Medicare would cover them on a domestic cruise. That is heartbreaking. And it shows why this point matters so much. Nobody boards a cruise expecting something like that to happen. Most people think, it's only a short cruise, or I'm pretty healthy, or we're not going that far. But medical emergencies do not care how short the cruise is. They do not care if it is your first cruise, your dream cruise, or the trip you finally booked after years of waiting. And for seniors, this is especially important. Falls, dehydration, infections, breathing problems, heart issues, diabetes, medication issues, and stomach bugs can become much more serious at sea than they might feel at home. The mistake is not trusting Medicare. The mistake is assuming it covers the ship without checking. And the same goes for private health insurance, credit card insurance, or a basic travel policy. Do not assume the word insurance means you are covered for a cruise. Cruise cover can be different. Some policies may not cover cruise medical treatment unless you choose cruise cover. Some may exclude pre-existing medical conditions unless you declare them and they are accepted. Some may have limits on evacuation. Some may not cover certain shore activities. And some credit card insurance may only work if you paid for the trip in a certain way. I know nobody wants to read insurance wording. It is not exactly poolside entertainment, but it is much better to be bored for 20 minutes before the cruise than financially shocked after it. So before you sail, ask direct questions. Am I covered for cruise travel? Am I covered for medical treatment on board? Am I covered for medical evacuation from the ship? Are my pre-existing conditions covered? Are all ports on the itinerary covered? Are my medications and medical equipment covered? Are my shore excursions covered? And what number do I call in an emergency? Also, if you have pre-existing medical conditions, do not hide them when buying insurance. That can backfire badly. You might save a little bit up front, then discover later that the thing you needed cover for is exactly the thing the insurer will not pay for. The goal is not to buy the cheapest policy just so you can say, I've got insurance. The goal is to buy the right policy for the cruise you are actually taking, the health conditions you actually have, and the risks that could actually happen at sea. And once you have it, keep the details easy to reach. Save the documents, take screenshots, print the emergency number if that helps. Do not bury the policy in a suitcase under 4 outfits you probably will not wear, because the worst time to learn what your insurance covers is when you are already sick, scared, and standing at the ship's medical center. So before you cruise, check the cover properly. Not after something goes wrong, because the cruise fare might be paid before you sail, but the biggest bill of the trip could arrive after you get home. Number 10. Packing medication where you can't reach it. This mistake sounds simple, But for senior cruisers, it can become serious very quickly. Because a lot of people pack medication the same way they pack socks. They put it in the big suitcase, they zip it up. They hand the bag over at the cruise terminal, and they think, I'll unpack it when it gets to the cabin. That might be fine for a spare cardigan. It is not fine for medication you actually need, because checked luggage on a cruise does not always arrive straight away. Sometimes your suitcase gets to the cabin quickly. Sometimes it takes hours. Sometimes it arrives closer to dinner. And sometimes you're standing in the hallway, staring at every passing suitcase like one of them owes you money. Now imagine your blood pressure tablets, diabetes medication, heart medication, pain medication, inhaler, eye drops, patches, injections, or important evening tablets are inside that missing bag. Suddenly, delayed luggage is not just annoying, it is stressful, and for some people, it can become unsafe. So the rule is simple. Essential medication stays with you. Not in checked luggage, not in a suitcase taken away at the port, not in a bag someone else is carrying. With you. Your embarkation day carry-on is not just for sunglasses, documents, and snacks you may or may not admit to packing. It is your safety bag. You want enough medication for the first day, the first night, and extra in case something gets delayed or changed. Flights can be canceled, weather can cause delays, suitcases can arrive late, ports can change. And your body does not care that the luggage system is busy. If you need medication at 6 o'clock, you need medication at 6 o'clock. Also, keep medication in proper labeled packaging where possible. Pill organizers are useful, and many people rely on them. But when you are traveling, especially through different countries or ports, it is smart to have proof of what the medication is and that it belongs to you. Some medicines can be restricted in certain places. Some can raise questions at security or customs. And the last thing you want is to be standing there with loose tablets in a plastic bag saying, "Trust me, they're all mine." That is not a relaxing cruise moment. If you use a pill organizer, also bring the labeled packaging, a medication list, copies of prescriptions, or a doctor's letter if needed. Especially for controlled medication, injections, strong pain medication, or anything that could be questioned. And make sure someone could understand your medication if you needed help. Write down the medication name, dose, when you take it, what it is for, and any allergies. Keep a copy on your phone and a paper copy in your bag. Because if something happens on board, you do not want to be trying to describe a tablet by saying, "It's the little white one." There are many little white tablets. That is not a medical description. That is a guessing game. Also think about temperature. Some medication should not get too hot. Some should not be left in direct sunlight. And some needs proper cooling. If your medication must stay cold, ask the cruise line before you sail what the correct process is. Do not wait until you are on board and hope the tiny cabin fridge can behave like a hospital fridge. That is not a plan. That is wishful thinking with a shelf. And do not forget port days. If you are getting off the ship for several hours, take any medication you may need while ashore. Not the entire bathroom cabinet, just what matters. If you might need an inhaler, take it. If you need tablets at lunchtime, take them. If you have emergency medication, take it. If you are diabetic, think about food timing, heat, walking, and delays. Because port days can run longer than expected. A bus can be late. A tour can take longer. The tender line can move slowly. And you may be too far from the ship to quickly go back for something important. The safest system is simple. Keep essential medication with you. Pack extra days. Keep it labeled. Carry a medication list. Check rules for any countries you're visiting. Plan for cooling if needed, and keep port day doses easy to reach. Because forgetting a hat is annoying. Forgetting reading glasses is frustrating. Forgetting where you put your cruise card can make you question every life choice you have ever made. But not being able to reach medication when you need it can change the whole day. So before you hand over your suitcase at the terminal, stop and ask yourself one question. If I do not see this bag again until tonight, do I still have everything important with me? If the answer is no, move the medication. Because on a cruise, your suitcase can take its time. Your medication should not. Number 11. Booking a port day. Your body can't handle. This final one is important because it can sneak up on people. You look at a port excursion and it sounds amazing. A walking tour through an old town, a scenic lookout, a beach day, a waterfall, ancient ruins, a local market, a beautiful island stop. And the photos look perfect. Everyone in the brochure is smiling, the sun is shining, and nobody appears to be sweating through their shirt wondering why they wore the wrong shoes. So you book it. But then the real port day arrives. It is hotter than expected. The ground is uneven. There are stairs. The bus is parked farther away than you thought. There are not many places to sit. The bathroom is not close. The guide is moving quickly. And suddenly, the lovely little excursion you booked starts feeling like a survival challenge with a souvenir shop at the end. This is a mistake many senior cruisers can make, and it does not happen because they are careless. It happens because cruise excursions can sound easier on paper than they feel in real life. Words like moderate walking, some steps, uneven surfaces, or short walk from the bus can mean very different things depending on the port, the weather, and your body that day. And let's be honest, a short walk to a very fit tour guide can feel like a sponsored hike to someone with sore knees, breathing problems, balance issues, a bad hip, or feet that gave up 2 streets ago. That is why seniors should never book a port day just because it looks beautiful. You have to book it based on what your body can realistically handle, because port days can be harder than sea days. On the ship, there are lifts, places to sit, air conditioning, staff nearby, and your cabin if you need to rest. In port, you may be dealing with heat, hills, cobblestones, crowds, tenders, shuttle buses, long piers, slippery paths, beach sand, stairs, and toilets that are either far away or not exactly 5-star. And for older travelers, heat and falls are not small things. Older adults are more prone to heat-related health problems, and falls are one of the biggest injury risks for people over 65. So this is not about being dramatic. It is about being smart before you are stuck halfway through a tour thinking, I should not have booked this. The biggest trap is overestimating how you will feel on the day. At home, you might think, I can manage that. But on a cruise, you may already be tired. You may have slept badly. You may have walked more than usual the day before. You may be dehydrated. You may have had an early start. You may have been standing in a tender line, sitting on a hot bus, or walking around in humidity that feels like the air has turned into soup. And suddenly, your normal ability level is not the same. That is why you need to read the excursion details properly, not just the title, not just the pretty photos. Read the fine print. How long is the tour? How much walking is involved? Are there stairs? Is the ground uneven? Is it suitable for walkers, scooters, or wheelchairs? Is there shade? Are there toilets? How long are you on the bus? Can you sit down if needed? Is there free time, or are you expected to keep up with the group? And most importantly, can you leave early if it becomes too much? That last question matters, because some excursions are easy to step away from. Others are not. If you're on a bus tour with stops, you might be able to sit one part out. But if you are on a hike, a remote island visit, a long walking tour, or a place where the group moves together, there may not be an easy escape. And that can turn a bad choice into a very stressful day. Also, do not book a hard tour just because everyone else in your group wants to do it. This happens a lot. Someone says, "Come on, you'll be fine." And maybe they mean well, but they are not the one who has to walk on your knees, breathe with your lungs, balance with your feet, or recover in your cabin afterwards. If the tour is too much, say so before you book it. Not when the group is already halfway up a hill and you are wondering if a local taxi would accept your cruise card and a desperate look. There is no shame in choosing the easier option. Sometimes the best senior port day is not the biggest excursion. Sometimes it is a shorter tour, a scenic drive, a shuttle into town, a beach with proper facilities, a relaxed cafe near the port, or staying on board for part of the day and enjoying the quieter ship. That is still cruising. You do not have to punish yourself in every port just to prove you made the most of it. A good port day should leave you with memories, not blisters, dizziness, heat exhaustion, or the kind of knee pain that makes the next 2 days feel like a personal attack. So, before you book any excursion, be honest. Not pessimistic, honest. Ask yourself, could I do this on a hot day, after a poor sleep, with crowds, limited seating, and a long walk back? If the answer is no, choose something easier. Because the goal is not to do the most difficult port day. The goal is to enjoy the cruise safely and still have enough energy for dinner, the show, and maybe one more dessert you definitely did not need. So do not book the port day your holiday self wants to imagine. Book the port day your real body can actually enjoy. That one decision can save you from turning a beautiful stop into the hardest day of the cruise. If this video helped you, please subscribe to Cruise for You because I share honest cruise tips that can save you stress, money, and regret before your next sailing. And if you made it all the way to the end, write cruise for you in the comments so I know you stayed with me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.